Hi everyone, it's Don, and I hope you're having a fantastic week. Well, I certainly hope the people on the Carnival Magic are having a better week this week than they did starting on Sunday. So, a few weeks before the cruise was supposed to set sail on the 14th, on Sunday, out of Miami on the Carnival Magic, people started receiving emails saying, don't show up to the cruise ship until it's your time to get on board. In case you don't know, if you're a first time cruiser or just looking into cruising, you have a set time given to you when you book. They will let you know ahead of time. Show up at this time because they don't want, if you hold 6,000 people on a cruise ship, they don't want 6,000 people showing up at 11. So they spread it out so people, it can get through and nobody's waiting for too long. So all well and good. People understood, okay, we'll show up on time. But, a lot of people don't pay attention to that because, let's face it, the hotels let out at 11. And if you're cruise scheduled to get on at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you got 4 hours and what are you going to do? You're probably heading to the cruise port to try and get on the ship and start relaxing and enjoying your vacation. Well, people were in for a very rude awakening on this cruise on the Carnival Magic. They got there and there was no embarkation. There was no embarkation at 11, at 12, at 1. In fact, they didn't start boarding anybody onto the ship until 4 o'clock that day, which is about 5 hours to 6 hours later than the average start time of starting to get people on the ship. And Carnival was, they tried to say that numerous factors were part of this. From late embarkation from the passengers, there was hold up with customs and immigration, but in reality 90% of this problem was because the cruise before was a theme cruise where they had huge stages and lighting and visual effects set up for musical performances and numbers. And people like Janet Jackson were on board, and everyone had a great time from all I hear on that cruise. It was a themed cruise. The trouble is, they got to take all that stuff down before passengers start to embark the next day. You can't be taking down heavy light stands and electrical equipment and generators with people walking around on the top decks. And this is what really held up 90% of the reason people stopped, weren't able to get on the cruise. It took them that long to get off. Not to mention they have people who are wandering around waiting for their time to disembark, so they can't really get at all their stuff as fast as they want. They have to be careful of the passengers that are on the ship already. So it just became a mess. You have thousands of people standing in line in hot temperature, and I commiserate because I was in Florida that day. As you know, I got back from my group cruise, and we spent the day in the Everglades out on the hot air balloons and flamingo garden balloons. Hot air balloons, where'd that come from? The Everglade airboat rides and flamingo gardens. So I knew exactly how hot that was that day, and it's just stand around on cement with no shade and no cover for 6 hours. That would be excruciating. Now, Carnival did pass out water. They handed out lunch vouchers to people. They were trying to help the passengers as much as they could. They just didn't get them on the ship. And there was no cover at the Miami port for them because once you're inside a little bit, there's not a lot of room. Most people were outside waiting in the hot sun, which, if you have kids, Carnival is known for, the fun ships and having kids on board. And it must have been absolutely horrible. Medical staff had numerous calls of people with heat exhaustion and fainting, dizzy spells, and they did their best to handle the situation, but it was basically just a cluster, if you know what I mean. It was not good. Passengers did start embarking at 4 o'clock They finally got everybody on board around 6:30, so only 2.5 hours to get them on board, which was not too bad. But there was just so many problems on this cruise getting on board. A lot of passengers are saying, they're demanding for some compensation in some kind. And I'm of the one mind that if it's a problem at the port and there's an issue like customs is taking longer, or there was an engine problem on the ship and it got a little bit late to port, they're having so it took a little longer to take off. Those are things that you just live with. But in this case, if it was because of a previous cruise that they didn't leave enough time to disembark all the equipment and all the things that needed to get off the ship to allow people back on the ship, then that's Carnival's planning's problem. So I kind of think that's almost like that construction cruise that Norwegian did at that one point. I'm thinking maybe compensation is due to these passengers. At least send everybody something to their stateroom as a reward or a compensation of some kind. Because that was, we can't get on the ship. We have to stay because you planned poorly. You underestimated the amount of time you would need to disembark all the equipment from that previous cruise. Maybe that stuff should have been started to be taken down the night before when people were in bed, but then you would have people on the deck underneath them going, what's all the noise above me? I'm trying to sleep on my cruise. So you see where they're caught. Maybe instead of a 6 or 7 day cruise coming up after, you make it 1 day shorter to allow you the time to get everybody off, but then you're losing a day's income. So you see where the cruise line's coming from there. It's a kind of a case of cruise lines trying to do too much and getting caught with their pants down, not being able to deliver the product that they normally deliver in a timely manner. And that's when these stories come out, and that's what turns people against cruising. And, if this is your first cruise experience and you go to the port and it's the port of Miami, and you take 6 hours where you're sweating in the sun and just drenched, and kids are running around and people are fainting. Are you going to cruise again? Are you ever going to cruise with Carnival again? Because guess what? As all this story's going around on that embarkation fiasco, stories are going around, for instance, on my cruise when we get on the 7th in Fort Lauderdale on the Regal Princess. The first thing everybody on board in my group was saying is how fast Embarkation was. We didn't look at our times when to get on the ship. People I talked to got there at 11, 10 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock. Didn't matter when you got there. Basically, you walked into the port, handed them your luggage to the porters, walked into the terminal, straight to a kiosk, got your medallion, and walked directly on the ship. That fast. There was literally no wait at any time that day for anybody. Anybody. Every single person I talked to, no matter what time, got on the ship like that. It's the fastest process I've ever seen. And I've been to Fort Lauderdale on Princess before as well. This was the fastest it's ever been. And then you hear a story like this. 6 hours in the hot, humid sun of Miami with nothing to protect you. Carnival, you kind of dropped the ball. You kind of dropped the ball on this one, and you got to do something right for those passengers on board. They're on in the middle of their sailing now. They left on Sunday. So let's hope that when they come back, we hear some good news and some good stories that they, did something special for the passengers and not just send out a letter saying, we apologize for any inconvenience. Well, the inconvenience might have been caused by your own planning. That's not an inconvenience. That's a downfall. That's an error. So it's not an inconvenience. You did something wrong. Make it right. That's kind of my feelings. I'm one that if something happens, you know me, you live with it. You just go with it. No problem. You just move on and enjoy your cruise. But in this case, if it was because the stage took too long, you got to do something to make it right for your passengers. What do you guys think? Do you think Carnival dropped the ball on this? Do you think cruise lines are just getting too greedy and trying to shove too much on it? The people on the cruise before rave reviews all over the place, how such a great time they had. It was such a great themed cruise. Unfortunately, it affects the people after them, and they didn't have such a great start to their cruise. Let me know what you think down below, and I kind of side with the passengers a bit on this one. So I hope you liked this video and news update. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. You want to see more tips, more tricks, more travel vlogs from around the world, hit that subscribe button. Till next time, have yourself a safe and a great vacation.